We build our lives on the comfort of trust, believing the threat lies in the dark, far from our manicured lawns. But what happens when the predator wears the uniform of a hero and commands the respect of a nation? The answer lies in the double life of a decorated commander named Russell Williams. The interrogation room felt cold and quiet. It was February 2010. Across the metal table sat a decorated military commander, a man accustomed to giving orders and receiving unquestioned obedience. Detective Sergeant Jim Smythe slid a single photograph across the surface. It showed a distinct boot tread captured in the mud near a crime scene. Smith leaned forward, his voice a soft, measured whisper, and asked the commander to check the soles of the very boots he was wearing. In that silent heartbeat, an ironclad facade began to fracture. To understand the terrifying gravity of this betrayal, we must rewind the clock to an era when uniform and rank meant unquestioned trust. Colonel Russell Williams stood at the pinnacle of Canadian society. He was a decorated pilot, an elite aviator who routinely flew the Prime Minister and even the royal family during their visits overseas. As the commander of Canadian Forces based Trenton, the largest air base in the nation, he governed with an icy stoic authority. His peers viewed him as a paragon of duty, a man whose tailored uniform and gleaming medals projected a perfect picture of security when he walked through the manicured neighborhoods of nearby towns. Neighbors offered waves of respect. He possessed the ultimate mask of respectability. Yet, just beyond the perimeter of that towering prestige, ordinary women lived quiet, unassuming lives. The nearby towns of Belleville and Tweed featured peaceful, tree-lined avenues where families knew their neighbors by name. Residents often left their doors unlocked during the day, confident in the protective shadow of the military base and the roaring jets overhead. Among them was Corporal Marie-France Comeau, a dedicated flight attendant in the military who cherished her quiet evenings at home in Brighton. She nurtured dreams of advancing her career, building a warm, inviting sanctuary inside her small house. She loved her routine, unaware that a predator walked among the elite. Methodically studying her neighborhood, farther down the highway lived Jessica Lloyd. She was a vibrant young woman navigating the responsibilities of a new job and a bustling social life. Jessica spent her weekends laughing with friends and sharing dreams for the future. Her home was a safe haven filled with warm light and the soft fume of television on a Sunday night. Neither of these women knew that the prestigious commander, the man tasked with defending their nation, harbored a sinister obsession. While they locked their doors against imagined thieves, a meticulously organized predator was already crossing their thresholds. He used the cover of darkness and the arrogant certainty of his rank to breach the sanctity of their bedrooms. The timeline of terror escalated slowly, beginning as a strange series of nocturnal intrusions. Throughout 2009, numerous women in the region reported odd, unsettling disturbances. They returned to find their homes subtly rearranged. Expensive deadbolts were bypassed without a single scratch on the metal. A window screen stood slightly ajar in the morning breeze. More chillingly, personal items vanished from their dressers. The quiet towns whispered of a prowler, a phantom who moved through the shadows with military precision, leaving no fingerprints behind. The victims felt a lingering psychological dread, knowing a stranger had invaded their most private spaces while they slept. But the phantom refused to stay in the shadows. The creeping dread reached a point of no return in November of 2009. Marie-France Comeau failed to report for duty at the airbase. Her friends knew she never missed a shift, and their concern quickly transformed into panic. Police officers approached her quiet home in Brighton, noticing the deceptive stillness of the autumn morning. They breached the front door, stepping into a sanctuary that had been permanently violated inside. They made a grim discovery. Marie France had met a brutal permanent end. The methodical nature of the crime scene suggested a predator who possessed immense patience and terrifying physical control. The community reeled, terrified that a monster was hunting in their own backyards, oblivious to the fact that the monster was wearing a uniform. Investigators descended on the Brighton home, initiating a sprawling forensic puzzle. They analyzed every inch of the residence, searching for a single misstep from a phantom who seemed invincible. The attacker left minimal physical evidence, but the sheer organization of the intrusion pointed to someone with advanced tactical training. Detectives began charting the previous burglaries on a massive corkboard map. They identified a geographic cluster, a hunting ground that looped around the local military installations. Yet, before they could narrow their suspect pool, the predator struck again in January 2010. Jessica Lloyd vanished from her home in Tweed. Her sudden absence sent a shockwave of terror through the tight-knit community. Jessica had sent a text message to a friend late in the evening, confirming she was safe and settling in for the night. The next morning, her car sat abandoned in the snowy driveway. Her purse and keys rested untouched on the kitchen counter. The terrifying silence of her empty home triggered a massive, desperate search effort. Hundreds of volunteers scoured the frozen fields and dense forest surrounding Highway 37. Police officers established strategic roadblocks along the rural routes, stopping every passing vehicle in a frantic bid to uncover a clue. The clock was ticking, and the investigators knew they were hunting an escalating predator who felt untouchable. Amid the chaotic search, a vital piece of the puzzle emerged from the frozen earth. Investigators scouring the perimeter of Jessica's property discovered a distinct set of tire tracks pressed into the fresh snow. The forensic team carefully poured plaster into the impressions, capturing a unique tread pattern belonging to a specific type of all-terrain tire. Beside the tracks, they found the faint but unmistakable impression of a military-style boot. Detectives cross-referenced the tire tread with regional databases. Working through the night in a windowless command center, they narrowed the search to a specific model of sport utility vehicle, a Nissan Pathfinder. The mandate went out to the officers manning the roadblocks. They needed to log every single vehicle, matching that exact description fate. And the sheer arrogance of the predator soon collided on a dark rural road. During a routine stop near the search grid, an officer shined his flashlight onto a silver Nissan Pathfinder. Behind the wheel sat Colonel Russell Williams. He offered a polite, stoic smile, answering the officer's questions with the calm, detached authority of a base commander. The officer logged the vehicle and the driver's name, sending the report back to headquarters. When detectives matched the commander's vehicle to the specific tires found at the crime scene, a chilling realization washed over the precinct. The most powerful military figure in the region, the man coordinating logistical support for the search efforts, was their prime suspect. The investigation pivoted into a high-stakes psychological chess match. Detectives knew they had one chance to corner a man who possessed limitless resources and a reputation that shielded him from normal scrutiny. They invited Williams to the station under the guise of a routine follow-up, ensuring he felt in control of the situation. Enter Detective Sergeant Jim Smythe. Smythe was a master of behavioral analysis, a man who built his career on dismantling arrogant predators. He prepared for the interview with meticulous precision, studying every detail of the commander's pristine public life and the horrific timeline of the crimes. When Williams entered the interview room on that cold February afternoon, he exuded total confidence. He wore comfortable clothes, casually sipping water, convinced his supreme intellect would easily outmaneuver a local detective. Smythe matched his calm demeanor, projecting a non-threatening conversational tone for hours. They discussed military life, local geography, and the ongoing search for Jessica. Smythe slowly, methodically tightened the invisible noose. He presented small, undeniable facts, asking Williams to clarify minor discrepancies in his timeline. The commander offered smooth, rehearsed answers, his ego preventing him from realizing the trap had already sprung. He believed his elite status made him immune to consequences. But Smythe possessed the physical evidence, and he was waiting for the perfect moment to shatter the illusion. The atmosphere in the room shifted. Smythe leaned forward. Dropping the conversational tone, the pacing accelerated. He presented the photograph of the boot tread found in the snow. He pointed to the boots on the commander's feet. The tread matched. The silent, suffocating realization filled the small space. Williams stopped speaking. His eyes darted toward the closed door. The pristine facade cracked, fracturing into 1,000 jagged pieces. Smythe pressed harder, demanding the truth about Jessica Lloyd, and refusing to let the commander hide behind his military rank. The stoic commander finally crumbled. His arrogant posture collapsed under the weight of flawless detective work. In a quiet, defeated whisper, Williams confessed to his double life. He revealed the grim, desolate location where he had hidden Jessica, extinguishing the final desperate hopes of her grieving family. The predator had stolen her future, discarding her in a frozen wooded area miles from her safe haven. The horrific truth was now undeniable. The monster stalking the women of Ontario was the man entrusted to protect them, but the terror did not end with the confession. Armed with search warrants, investigators breached the heavy metallic locks of the commander's elegant home in Ottawa. Inside, they uncovered a house of horrors hiding in plain sight. Detectives navigated through immaculately decorated rooms to discover a hidden cache of unspeakable magnitude. Williams had kept meticulous, cataloged trophies from his years of night stalking. Hundreds of stolen items rested in organized bins inside his closet. Thousands of digital photographs documented his systematic campaign of terror. The man who commanded armies had spent his nights creeping through the dark, obsessed with dominating the innocent. The swift hand of moral justice arrived in October of 2010, stripped of his rank and his false honor. Russell Williams stood before a judge and pleaded guilty to a staggering list of charges. The court ensured he would never see freedom again, handing down 2 consecutive life sentences with no chance of parole for 25 years. The Canadian Forces underwent a painful internal reckoning, literally burning his uniforms and erasing his name from their prestigious history books. The elite privilege that once shielded him could not withstand the sheer force of relentless, brilliant detective work. The monster was finally locked in a cage. But some dark secrets are not hidden behind military medals, but rather beneath the warm, folksy charm of a small town. Our descent into deception continues in Carthage, Texas, where a strange metallic smell emanating from a frozen garage would soon shatter another idyllic community. August 1997, a large white chest freezer sits quietly in the pristine detached garage of an affluent Texas estate. The appliance is sealed shut with thick industrial duct tape, humming a low mechanical tune against the oppressive summer heat. Detectives approach the frozen tomb, guided by a faint, unexplainable odor that cuts through the fresh scent of manicured lawns. Inside, they will find a prominent socialite hidden away for 9 months, while the town's favorite citizen spent her massive fortune. But this grim revelation is only the final act of a masterclass in deception. Carthage, Texas, in the mid-1990s, was a place defined by its quiet streets and tight-knit community. The town square bustled with familiar faces where neighbors greeted one another over sweet tea and Sunday morning choir hymnals. At the center of this wholesome existence stood Bernie Tide. He was the assistant funeral director, a man whose gentle demeanor brought comfort to grieving families during their darkest hours. Bernie sang tenors at the local Methodist church, organized lavish community events, and possessed a charismatic charm that blinded everyone around him. He was not just a citizen, He was a local saint, a pillar of unwavering respectability. Living just a few miles away behind heavy iron gates was Marjorie Nugent. She was an 81-year-old widow possessing an immense fortune left behind by her late husband. Marjorie was a woman of high standards, maintaining a spotless estate and a strict daily routine. She managed her extensive financial portfolio with a sharp mind, expecting excellence from anyone who crossed her threshold. Beneath her formidable exterior, Marjorie was a mother and a grandmother, seeking a quiet, dignified existence in her twilight years. She attended church services, supported local charities, and craved genuine companionship after the painful loss of her spouse. The intersection of these two lives began as a standard professional courtesy. Bernie assisted Marjorie with her husband's funeral arrangements in 1990, offering a soft voice and a sympathetic ear. Soon, this polite acquaintance transformed into an inseparable bond. Bernie began managing her affairs, driving her to appointments, and accompanying her on luxurious vacations across the globe. To the outside world, they appeared as odd but devoted companions. A charming young caretaker selflessly looking after an aging matriarch. But behind the heavy oak doors of the Nugent estate, a sinister dynamic was taking root. Built on control, manipulation, and access to an endless supply of wealth. The first subtle fracture in this perfect facade appeared in late 1996. Marjorie Nugent simply vanished from her usual social circles. She stopped answering her telephone, missed her routine appointments at the local bank, and ceased her regular communications with her family. When concerned relatives called the estate, Bernie Tide answered the line, projecting an aura of calm reassurance. He claimed Marjorie had suffered a minor stroke and was recovering at a specialized facility far away from the prying eyes of the public. Months dragged on, and the excuses evolved with chilling ease. Bernie told some neighbors that Marjorie was visiting a sister in Ohio, while telling others she was resting at a private resort. During this time of unsettling silence, financial institutions detected a flurry of irregular activity. Enormous sums of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars, were draining from Marjorie's vast accounts. The signatures on the checks looked rushed, lacking the precise confident strokes of the wealthy widow. Bank managers raised red flags, disturbed by the sudden erratic depletion of a lifetime of careful savings. Marjorie's family, tired of the evasive answers and mounting inconsistencies, initiated a formal inquiry. They reached out to Carthage authorities demanding a wellness check on their beloved matriarch. The local police hesitated, paralyzed by the sterling reputation of Bernie Tide. To question Bernie was to question the very fabric of the Carthage community. But as 1996 bled into 1997, the sheer volume of missing funds and the deafening silence from the Nugent estate forced the hands of law enforcement. The point of no return had arrived, setting the stage for a bitter clash between blind community loyalty and cold, hard facts. The investigation fell onto the shoulders of District Attorney Danny Buck Davidson. He faced an uphill battle fighting against a town that fought to protect its favorite son. As investigators began peeling back the layers of Bernie's life, they discovered a stunning reality. While Marjorie remained unseen, Bernie was playing the role of a generous benefactor, using her vast wealth to cement his local popularity. He purchased expensive vehicles for young members of the community. He bought small airplanes, funded local businesses, and donated lavish gifts to the church. He was buying the town's affection using stolen money to build a fortress of public goodwill, insulating himself from suspicion. Detectives launched a meticulous forensic audit of Marjorie's estate. They subpoenaed bank records, tracing the labyrinth of wire transfers and forged documents. The paper trail revealed a disturbing pattern of unchecked greed. Bernie was intercepting Marjorie's mail, hiding her financial statements, and abusing a power of attorney to secure total control over her assets. He was not merely managing her fortune, he was draining her accounts. enriching himself while maintaining his humble public persona. Financial experts spent weeks comparing signatures, concluding with absolute certainty that Marjorie had not signed a single document in over half a year. The beloved funeral director was running a sophisticated financial empire built entirely on deceit. Despite the mounting mountain of financial evidence, the Carthage community refused to accept the truth. Neighbors openly scoffed at the police, defending Bernie's character and insisting Marjorie was just being her usual reclusive self. The psychological warfare waged by Bernie was executed with precision. He smiled at church, sang in the choir, and looked grieving families in the eye, all while hiding a terrible secret. Detectives knew they needed physical proof. They needed to locate Marjorie Nugent to shatter the mass delusion that held the town captive. In August 1997, armed with sufficient circumstantial evidence, law enforcement secured a search warrant for the Nugent estate. A team of seasoned investigators arrived at the sprawling home, breaking the quiet of the affluent neighborhood. They conducted a painstaking room-by-room search. They documented untouched dust on the pristine furniture, unworn winter coats in the closets, and a deafening absence of life. The house felt like a museum, a time capsule, frozen in November 1996. But the main living quarters offered no answers to her whereabouts. The search eventually moved outdoors, expanding to the property's auxiliary buildings. Detectives pried open the heavy wooden doors of the detached garage. Stepping into the sweltering Texas heat against the far wall sat a large chest freezer. It was an ordinary appliance, yet sealed shut with strips of heavy tape. A faint, sickening scent leaked from the seams, a smell that experienced investigators knew all too well. They broke the seal, lifting the heavy white lid and shining their flashlights into the frosted darkness. There, concealed beneath frozen packages of meat, they made a grim discovery. They found the missing socialite. The mask of the beloved assistant funeral director shattered in an instant. The discovery sent shockwaves through the department. The ticking clock of justice struck midnight for Bernie Tide. Police moved swiftly, apprehending the choir singer before he could flee the state. Sitting in a cold, sterile interrogation room, the charismatic facade finally dissolved, confronted with the undeniable reality of the freezer. Bernie broke. He waived his rights and began to recount the final moments of Marjorie Nugent's life. The story he told was a chilling portrait of calculated betrayal, framing himself as a victim of her high standards. According to his confession, November 1996 brought an unbearable tension to the estate. Bernie claimed Marjorie had become dictatorial, monitoring his every move. But investigators saw through this transparent attempt at victim blaming. They saw a greedy opportunist who realized his financial lifeline was about to be cut. Marjorie had discovered his theft. She was preparing to confront him, preparing to revoke his access to her millions. Bernie knew his lavish lifestyle and his reign as the town's generous saint was coming to a sudden, permanent end. He described the fatal encounter with chilling detachment. Marjorie walked toward the garage, trusting the man she had allowed into her inner circle. Bernie followed closely behind, carrying a .22 caliber rifle. He raised the barrel. He pulled the trigger 4 times, striking the elderly woman in the back. She fell onto the cold concrete, her dignified life extinguished by the very man she trusted most. He then wrapped her body in a white sheet, placed her inside the freezer, and walked back into the town square to sing hymns with a smile on his face. The trial of Bernie Tide presented a unique challenge for the justice system. The citizens of Carthage were so blinded by the deceptive killer that prosecutors feared they could not secure an impartial jury. In an unprecedented move, the judge ordered a change of venue, relocating the trial to San Augustine, 50 miles away. In 1999, away from the blinding spell of his local popularity, a jury viewed the cold, hard facts. They saw through his charming demeanor, focusing on the stolen millions and the ultimate betrayal of a vulnerable widow. Bernie Tide was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. The story, however, experienced a controversial twist many years later. In 2014, new defense attorneys introduced psychological evaluations, claiming Bernie had suffered prior trauma influencing his actions. This led to a temporary release on bond, allowing the predator a brief taste of freedom, but the relentless pursuit of moral justice prevailed. The appellate courts and Marjorie's dedicated family fought back against this lenient narrative. In 2016, a new jury heard the undisputed facts of his financial crimes and the calculated nature of the act. They rejected the defense's sympathetic spin, sentencing him to 99 years, ensuring he would spend the remainder of his days facing the consequences of his greed. The legacy of Marjorie Nugent was restored, remembering her not as a demanding recluse, but as a trusting mother whose generosity was exploited by a master manipulator. While the facade of an affluent Texas estate crumbled, a different kind of deception was taking root out west. We leave the manicured lawns of Carthage and travel to a quiet boarding house in Sacramento, where another trusted caretaker was bearing a much darker secret beneath her vibrant garden. A dedicated social worker knocks on the heavy wooden door of a Victorian boarding house, searching for a vulnerable man who vanished without a trace. The sweet elderly landlady greets her with a warm smile, offering tea and gentle reassurances that the man simply wandered off. But as the social worker turns to leave, her eyes drift toward the side yard, where the dark, damp earth has been freshly turned. The stark contrast between the landlady's grandmotherly charm and the lingering scent of overturned soil sets off a silent, terrifying alarm. In the mid-1980s, the tree-lined avenues of downtown Sacramento, California, projected an aura of quiet suburban stability. Nestled within this historic district at 1426 F Street stood a two-story Victorian home that served as a beacon of hope for the city's forgotten souls. Dorothea Puente ran this boarding house with a seemingly endless well of compassion. She wore floral dresses, oversized glasses, and a gentle smile that instantly disarmed anyone who crossed her threshold. To the neighbors, she was a selfless pillar of the community, dedicating her twilight years to caring for the elderly, the disabled, and those battling inner demons. The residents of the F Street home were individuals who had fallen through the cracks of a rigid society. They were retired veterans, former laborers, and fragile spirits seeking a quiet place to rest. Dorothea provided them with hot, home-cooked meals, crisp, clean linens, and a sense of belonging they had not felt in decades. They spent their afternoons reading on the wraparound porch, listening to the radio, and sharing stories of their youth. For many, this house was a final sanctuary, a place where they could live out their days with dignity, shielded from the harsh realities of the streets. Dorothea managed every aspect of their lives, taking control of their mail, their medical appointments, and their government benefit checks. She presented this as an act of profound charity, saving her fragile tenants the stress of navigating complex bureaucratic systems. Local social workers marveled at her efficiency, often placing their most difficult cases directly into her care. They trusted her without question, viewing her as an eccentric but devoted guardian angel. Behind the heavy floral curtains, however, the warm meals and soothing words masked a terrifying, calculated trap. The fragile illusion began to fracture in the autumn of 1988. Alvaro Montoya, a 52-year-old man battling severe mental health challenges, depended on the structure and routine of the boarding house to survive. He was a gentle soul who spoke softly and maintained a close, trusting relationship with his outreach counselor, Judy Moyes. Judy checked on Alvaro regularly, ensuring he took his medication and felt secure in his environment. When Alvaro missed several scheduled meetings in early November, a cold spike of dread settled in her chest. Judy contacted Dorothea Puento expecting a simple logical explanation. The sweet landlady answered the phone in her usual soft voice, claiming Alvaro had decided to take a spontaneous vacation to Mexico with family members. The explanation defied all reason. Alvaro did not have the financial means, the passport, or the mental capacity to orchestrate an international trip on his own. Judy refused to accept this dismissive story, knowing her client would never leave without saying goodbye. She pushed back against the sweet facade and demanded a formal welfare check from the Sacramento Police Department. On November 11, 1988, Detective John Cabrera arrived at the boarding house, expecting a routine missing persons inquiry. Dorothea invited him inside with perfect composure, offering him coffee and presenting a meticulously organized folder of Alvalo's paperwork. She moved through the house with practiced ease, radiating an aura of total innocence. But as Detective Cabrera walked the property to conduct a standard visual sweep, he noticed something unnatural about the side garden. The soil was uneven, recently disturbed, and oddly devoid of the lush vegetation that characterized the rest of the yard. Detective Cabrera secured permission to probe the disturbed soil, returning the next morning with a team of investigators and shovels. The morning air was crisp as the officers began turning over the dirt near the property line. Dorothea watched them from her porch, sipping coffee, and casually chatting with the officers about the weather. She maintained a posture of supreme confidence, projecting the image of a cooperative citizen, eager to clear up a simple misunderstanding. As the heavy steel shovels dug deeper into the earth, the cheerful facade of the F Street house began to dissolve. At a depth of 3 feet, the blade of a shovel struck something wrapped in thick plastic and securing tape. The investigators carefully brushed away the dark soil, uncovering a grim hidden reality that halted the entire operation. It was clear this garden held secrets far darker than a single missing person. Forensic anthropologists were immediately dispatched to the scene, transforming the quiet residential property into an active command center. The officers established a strict perimeter, erecting opaque screens to shield the chilling unearthing from the gathering crowd of horrified neighbors. While the forensic team painstakingly documented the first discovery, Dorothea played her most audacious card. She approached the detectives with a frail, trembling voice, asking if she could walk to the nearby Clarion Hotel to meet her nephew for a brief cup of coffee. Convinced she was merely a cooperative witness and lacking the formal evidence to detain her at that exact moment, the officers allowed the grandmotherly figure to slip past the police tape. She picked up her purse, opened her umbrella, and vanished into the bustling city streets. Back at the boarding house, the true scale of the deception emerged piece by agonizing piece. Over the next several days, the forensic team mapped out a network of clandestine burials across the front, back, and side yards. They brought in industrial sifters, processing every ounce of dirt to recover vital evidence. They unearthed the tragic endings of 7 different individuals, all former tenants who had entrusted their twilight years to the sweet landlady. Investigators realized these vulnerable citizens did not simply wander off or move away. They met a silent, permanent end, systematically silenced, so their guardian could intercept their monthly Social Security checks. As the physical excavation continued, financial investigators began digging into Dorothea's paper trail. They uncovered a sprawling, decades-long history of forgery, grand theft, and deception. She possessed a terrifying ability to manipulate government agencies, intercepting mail, and forging signatures with practiced precision. The investigators found stacks of cash checks meticulously filed away in her bedroom. She had built a lucrative empire on the forgotten identities of society's most vulnerable members, purchasing expensive perfumes and tailored clothing with the funds meant to keep her tenants alive. The disappearance of the landlady triggered a massive nationwide manhunt. Her photograph, featuring her signature oversized glasses and grandmotherly smile, was broadcast across every television station in the country. The authorities realized they were dealing with a master manipulator, a woman who used society's inherent trust in the elderly as an impenetrable shield. The Sacramento police coordinated with federal agencies tracing her known aliases and monitoring bus terminals, convinced she would use her deceptive charm to secure safe passage out of the region. 5 days after she walked away from the excavation site, the ticking clock of the manhunt reached its final hour in Los Angeles, over 300 miles away from the horror she left behind. Dorothea sat comfortably in a modest motel cafe. She had altered her appearance, shedding her recognizable floral dresses for discreet, practical clothing. True to her predatory nature, she was already spinning a new web. She had struck up a conversation with an elderly pensioner sitting at the counter, introducing herself under a fabricated name. She leaned in close, speaking in her signature soft tone, offering the man companionship and prodding him for details about his government benefits. She was actively setting the stage for her next terrible act. But the arrogant predator made a fatal miscalculation. The pensioner she was attempting to groom had been reading the morning newspaper and watching the evening news. He recognized the specific contour of her face and excused himself to use a public payphone in the lobby, dialing the local authorities with trembling hands. The Los Angeles Police Department descended on the cafe with silent, overwhelming force. Officers surrounded the exits, their hands resting on their holstered weapons, as they approached the quiet booth. When they called out her true name, Dorothea did not flinch or cry out in surprise. She simply placed her hands on the table, maintaining an aura of cold, defiant superiority. The mask of the sweet caregiver was gone, replaced by the calculating stare of a woman who believed she had outsmarted the world. The heavy metallic click of handcuffs echoed through the quiet diner. The trial of Dorothea Punti commenced in 1993, captivating a nation struggling to comprehend how such profound evil could hide behind a grandmotherly smile. Prosecutors meticulously laid out the forensic evidence, the forged checks, and the testimonies of the dedicated social workers who finally brought her dark empire to light. The defense attempted to portray her as a misunderstood caretaker overwhelmed by the natural passing of her tenants, but the jury saw through the final layer of her deception. She was convicted on 3 counts and stripped of her freedom forever. The judge handed down 2 life sentences, plus an additional concurrent life sentence without the possibility of parole. She was relocated to the Central California Women's Facility, trading her manicured gardens and stolen luxuries for the cold, concrete reality of a prison cell. She spent the rest of her days behind bars, maintaining her innocence until her natural passing in the year 2011. The F Street boarding house remains standing today, a silent monument to the vulnerable souls who lost their futures to a master manipulator. The horrific reality of a trusted community figure using their power to silence others is a theme that echoes through the darkest corners of human history. Decades later, a similar betrayal of public trust would unfold in the scorching heat of Las Vegas, Nevada, when a distinctive maroon GMC Yukon was caught on a neighbor's doorbell camera. It set in motion a chilling investigation, leading straight to an elected official and a brilliant reporter who made a grim discovery in his own driveway. A quiet morning in an affluent Las Vegas suburb, September 2, 2022. Sprinklers hiss over manicured lawns. The desert heat has not yet settled in down a peaceful residential street. A neighbor says doorbell camera captures a fleeting, ominous sight. A distinctive maroon GMC Yukon prowls past the quiet driveways. It glides with purposeful, predatory silence. Moments later, a renowned investigative journalist is found lying outside his home. His brilliant career brought to a brutal, permanent end. The mastermind behind this quiet horror was a man sworn to serve the public trust. Jeff German was a titan of old-school journalism. For over 40 years, his byline struck fear into the hearts of corrupt politicians and organized crime syndicates across the Nevada desert. He lived for the relentless pursuit of truth. He spent his mornings sifting through dense court documents, and his afternoons cultivating sources in the dim smoke-filled casinos of Las Vegas. Jeff was a fixture of the city, a man who possessed an encyclopedic knowledge of municipal secrets. He gave a voice to the voiceless and held the powerful accountable. Colleagues remembered his gruff exterior, masking a generous mentor who loved his city too much to watch it fall into decay. His days were built around routine defined by the clatter of keyboards and the quiet satisfaction of a broken story. He stood as a beacon of integrity in a town famous for its illusions. While Jeff German built a legacy of truth, Robert Tells craved the spotlight of elite privilege. Tells was a practicing attorney who managed to secure a niche, yet powerful position as the Clark County Public Administrator. His office was tasked with managing the final estates of deceased residents. It was a role that demanded immense empathy and flawless ethics. Instead, Terrells transformed the municipal department into a personal fiefdom. He wore expensive tailored suits and smiled for the cameras, projecting an aura of untouchable prestige. Behind the heavy wooden doors of his office, a toxic environment festered. He ruled through intimidation, demanding total loyalty from his terrified staff. Tyre believed his elected status placed him above civilian scrutiny. He basked in the prestige of local government, convinced his sophisticated facade could mask his profound arrogance. He enjoyed the clinking of crystal glasses at political fundraisers, soaking in the admiration of high society. But his dictatorial reign generated desperate whispers within the echoing halls of the county courthouse. Employees spoke of emotional manipulation and blatant favoritism, creating a culture of constant paranoia. Those terrified whispers eventually reached the ear of the one man in Las Vegas who knew exactly how to expose the rot beneath a polished surface. Jeff German began to ask questions, pulling at the threads of a carefully woven municipal lie. In the spring of 2022, Jeff German published a series of damning, explosive articles. The sprawling exposes detailed serious allegations of workplace hostility, favoritism, and severe mismanagement within the public administrator's office. Jeff laid bare the grim reality of the department, using on-the-record quotes from desperate employees who could no longer endure the abuse. The community read every word. The journalistic revelations shattered the manicured image Tells had so carefully constructed. His facade of high society respectability crumbled overnight. The public backlash was swift and decisive. Tells lost his primary election in June, a humiliating political defeat that stripped him of his coveted title and his influential future. The devastating loss severed his vital connection to power. Rather than reflect on his failures, Terrell became obsessed with the journalist who exposed his dark secret. He took to social media, launching bitter, unhinged tirades against Jeff German. The ousted official stewed in a toxic mix of rage and shattered narcissism, pacing the hardwood floors of his suburban home. Convinced he had been wronged by an inferior adversary, Jeff German continued his vital work, preparing a follow-up story regarding the ongoing turmoil surrounding Tells. He remained undeterred by the online threats, treating them as the desperate flailing of a defeated politician. September approached, bringing cooler winds to the Las Vegas Valley. On a quiet Friday morning, the tension finally snapped. The relentless journalist stepped outside his home, unaware that a predator had been stalking his neighborhood, wearing an elaborate disguise and carrying a quiet resolve to silence the truth forever. When the grim discovery was made outside the journalist's home, the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department launched a massive, meticulous investigation. The physical evidence at the scene was remarkably scarce, leaving behind an elegant mystery that demanded brilliant detective work. Investigators began by canvassing the vast neighborhood, knocking on doors, and requesting terabytes of security camera footage from the surrounding blocks. This painstaking process required officers to sit in darkened surveillance rooms for days, scrubbing through hours of mundane suburban life. They searched for a single digital ghost, hoping to find a break in the case. Their profound patience yielded a crucial singular anomaly. A distinctive maroon GMC Yukon was spotted circling the victim's block multiple times. The footage was grainy, but the vehicle displayed distinct chrome handles and a specific sunroof configuration. At the same time, separate cameras captured a sinister figure stalking the property on foot. The perpetrator wore a bizarre oversized straw hat and a bright orange reflective construction shirt. The disguise was designed to blend into the sprawling development of the Las Vegas suburbs, an arrogant attempt to hide in plain sight among neighborhood landscapers. Detectives utilized advanced photogrammetry, a complex, scientific process analyzing the specific shadows and unique stride of the disguised figure. They cross-referenced the maroon vehicle with local registration databases, executing a digital dragnet that narrowed thousands of registered vehicles down to a handful of local owners. The detectives soon realized that Robert Tells, the disgraced politician who had publicly feuded with the victim, owned a vehicle matching those exact rare specifications. The arrogant official had driven his own car to commit the unthinkable act, convinced his oversized hat would render him invisible to modern forensic technology. The investigative net tightened as digital forensics experts prepared subpoenas for Tel's electronic footprint. Search warrants allowed technicians to extract deleted search histories and hidden geographical location data from cellular towers. They uncovered a terrifying trail of meticulous yet flawed planning. The digital footprint revealed that Tells had scored the internet for information on the journalist's residential address and daily routines. Furthermore, financial records tracked the purchase of the specific orange construction shirt and the oversized straw hat. Tells had bought the items weeks prior, leaving a permanent transactional record that shattered his fragile alibi. Surveillance footage from across the city was then stitched together, creating a definitive chronological timeline of the crime. High-definition traffic cameras and commercial security feeds tracked the maroon GMC Yukon leaving Tel's neighborhood, charting a direct path to the victim's street, and returning home shortly after the fatal encounter. Detectives mapped the exact route, proving the politician's movements matched the time of the incident perfectly. The puzzle pieces locked together with devastating precision. The arrogant politician had utilized the quiet hours of the morning, relying on the deceptive quiet of an affluent suburb to orchestrate his ultimate revenge. Detectives knew they possessed the narrative, but they needed undeniable physical proof to secure moral justice for the fallen reporter. They secured a comprehensive search warrant for the TELUS residence, preparing a tactical approach to confront the former executive. They understood they were dealing with a man of extreme privilege, an attorney who knew exactly how the justice system operated and how to manipulate evidence. The investigators moved with calculated silence, ready to dismantle the final remnants of his respectable, deceptive facade. The tactical teams breached the perimeter, heavy metallic clicks echoed, as expensive locks were disengaged by heavy tactical gear. Detectives swarmed the pristine suburban home. Tells barricaded himself inside his dwelling. He refused to surrender to the authorities. The standoff stretched on quinfied minutes felt like hours. The ticking clock of intense public scrutiny amplified the tension. Finally, officers forced entry into the primary residence. They found the disgraced politician in a state of disarray, his arrogant smile replaced by a desperate, panicked grimace. Forensic technicians immediately processed the vast residence. They moved with surgical precision through the immaculate rooms. Inside a hidden compartment within the garage, they made a massive discovery. They found a pair of soiled athletic shoes. The footwear had been cut into precise tiny pieces, a frantic attempt to destroy crucial physical evidence. but the perpetrator was careless in his panic. Traces of distinct crimson stains remained trapped within the deep fabric seams. Investigators matched the remaining tread pattern to obscure footprints left at the crime scene, securing a singular forensic link that could not be denied by any defense attorney. Then, astute detectives noticed a fresh, deep laceration on Tell's arm. Medical examiners analyzed the specific angle of the fresh injury. It was a classic defensive wound sustained during a fierce physical struggle with the victim. Jeff German had fought back with everything he had. In his final terrifying moments, the brave journalist had physically marked his attacker, leaving an undeniable biological testament that would ensure his own justice. The pristine mask of the brilliant attorney was shattered on the spot, exposing a pathetic, trembling predator hiding in his own garage. The trial of Robert Telles became a masterclass in relentless prosecutorial precision. Inside the Oster-Clark County courtroom, the disgraced official attempted to manipulate the narrative one last time. He took the witness stand, spinning wild, complex conspiracy theories and projecting his own guilt onto systemic political forces. He refused to show an ounce of remorse, but the jury saw right through the arrogant theatrical charade. The meticulous police work, the stitched surveillance footage, and the undeniable forensic truth formed an ironclad wall of moral justice. In August of 2024, the heavy wooden gavel fell. The jury delivered a definitive, satisfying guilty verdict. Robert Telles was stripped of his final shreds of dignity and sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 20 years. The outcome brought immense, palpable relief to the grieving journalism community, cementing Jeff German's permanent legacy as a hero who paid the ultimate price for the truth. The very justice system that Telles sought to manipulate ultimately ensured his permanent removal from a polite society. While this corrupt official masked his darkness behind the polished veneer of a municipal office, another predator hid his horrific reality behind the mundane walls of an ordinary city dwelling. As we leave the desert heat of Nevada, we travel to the working-class streets of Ohio, where an overpowering odor on Imperial Avenue was about to reveal a secret far more terrifying. The summer breeze carrying through the Mount Pleasant neighborhood of Cleveland held a suffocating, unnatural sweetness. Residents of Imperial Avenue closed their windows and covered their faces as the thick odor settled over their porches. City officials dismissed the desperate complaints, pointing a lazy finger toward a nearby sausage factory. But the foul wind did not originate from industrial meat processing. It drifted from a 3-story house at 1220 Imperial Avenue, where an arrogant predator hid his unthinkable secrets in the very earth his neighbors walked upon. The mid-2000s brought economic hardship to the historic streets of East Cleveland. Mount Pleasant, once a thriving working-class district, began to show the wear of closed factories and neglected infrastructure. Yet beneath the chipping paint of aging homes, tight-knit families continued their daily routines, watching out for one another. Mothers walked their children to local schools, and grandmothers swept the concrete steps of their front porches. In this enduring community, a shadow quietly took root, wearing the deceptive mask of a friendly, hospitable neighbor. Anthony Sowell walked these sidewalks with practiced charm, a former Marine with a polite demeanor. He offered warm meals and an open door to those facing difficult times. His targets were women fighting tremendous battles, facing addiction and poverty with an unwavering desire to find stability. They were beloved daughters, cherished sisters, and mothers who harbored genuine hopes for a better tomorrow. Tishana Culver was a vibrant soul whose laughter could fill a room. Imelda Hunter possessed a quiet grace and an enduring love for her children. When these vibrant women began vanishing from the neighborhood, their families pleaded for help. Desperate mothers handed out homemade flyers, taping them to telephone poles and storefront windows along Kinsman Road. They marched into local precincts, their voices trembling with grief, only to face bureaucratic indifference. The authorities categorized the missing women as transient, assuming they simply walked away from their troubled lives. This infuriating systemic oversight provided Anthony Sowell the perfect cloak of invisibility, emboldening his twisted sense of superiority. The fragile illusion shattered in the autumn of 2009, when a courageous woman broke the silence. On September 22nd, she arrived at a local precinct, bruised and terrified. She recounted a harrowing ordeal inside 1220 Imperial Avenue, describing a charming invitation that twisted into a prolonged nightmare of captivity and abuse. She survived only through sheer willpower, escaping his grasp, and bringing her nightmare into the light of the justice system. Despite her detailed, agonizing testimony, the wheels of justice turned with a frustrating slowness. Weeks ticked by, without any aggressive police intervention at the Imperial Avenue residence. Sowell continued his daily routine, smiling at the neighbors, convinced his calculated charm made him untouchable. The predator believed the authorities would once again dismiss the word of a struggling woman, relying on the same systemic apathy that protected him for years. But the pressure from the community and the undeniable weight of the survivor's testimony finally forced the department to act. On October 29, 2009, detectives secured a search warrant for the three-story home. They expected a routine investigation, perhaps hoping to find physical evidence tying the man to the reported assault. Instead, as they breached the heavy wooden door, the suffocating atmosphere of the house signaled they had crossed the threshold into a waking nightmare. The initial search team stepped into a home cluttered with debris and saturated with the same sickly odor that had plagued the street for months. Armed with flashlights, they navigated the narrow hallways, documenting everyday items that masked a sinister reality. On the third floor, a seasoned detective noticed a pustular stain and an odd arrangement of blankets in the corner of a bedroom. Peeling back the layers, the team made a grim discovery, locating the physical remains of two individuals left to decay in plain sight. Panic and urgency immediately swept through the Cleveland Police Department. The crime scene tape went up, stretching across the manicured lawns of Imperial Avenue and shutting down the entire block. A specialized forensic excavation unit arrived, bringing ground-penetrating radar and meticulous grid mapping tools. The initial two discoveries were not an isolated tragedy. The detectives realized with creeping horror that Anthony Sowell had transformed his unassuming residence into a personal graveyard. The forensic team moved into the basement, a dark, damp space filled with discarded furniture. Trained cadaver dogs signaled near a freshly turned patch of earth in the corner. Investigators fell to their knees using small hand trowels and specialized brushes to carefully remove the soil layer by layer. Within hours, they unearthed another set of remains buried shallowly beneath the foundation of the house. The scale of the deception began to overwhelm even the most hardened veterans of the force. Outside in the backyard, the meticulously planted garden revealed its true purpose. Investigators sectioned the soil into distinct quadrants, photographing every displaced rock and root. Over the next several days, they excavated the earth, discovering remains wrapped in plastic garbage bags and buried beneath the very soil where Sowell hosted neighborhood barbecues. Each new discovery struck a devastating blow to the community, confirming the worst fears of the families who had plastered the telephone poles with missing posters. As the tragic tally reached 11 victims, the investigation shifted toward an uncomfortable reflection on systemic failures. Detectives pulled the dusty, neglected files of the missing black women, matching dental records and DNA profiles to the tragic discoveries at Imperial Avenue. The realization set in that these women had not abandoned their families. They had met a brutal, permanent end mere blocks from where they vanished. The arrogant predator had weaponized the community's struggles, counting on society to look the other way. A specialized task force immediately formed to track down the monster responsible. Anthony Sowell, sensing the collapse of his carefully constructed world, had fled the neighborhood before the first policed cruiser parked on his lawn. Investigators canvassed local homeless shelters, abandoned warehouses, and transit stations. They pulled surveillance footage from nearby convenience stores, establishing a precise timeline of his movements in the hours leading up to the raid. The hunt for the Phantom of Imperial Avenue became the top priority for every sworn officer in the state of Ohio. The ticking clock amplified the tension across the city. News networks broadcasted his face around the clock. Citizens locked their doors, listening to the wail of distant sirens. Detectives chased phantom leads, following up on hundreds of panicked tips. The predator was cornered, his funds dwindled, his options evaporated. The false charm he relied upon could no longer buy him sanctuary. On October 31st, 2 days after the initial raid, a tip directed a massive strike team to the east side of Cleveland. Plainclothes officers spotted a man matching Sowell's description. Wandering near an intersection, backup units flooded the streets, cutting off every potential escape route. Officers drew their weapons, forming an impenetrable wall of blue. They ordered the man to the ground. Anthony Sowell offered no resistance. The arrogant smirk that defined his reign of terror vanished in the flashing red and blue lights. The metallic click of the heavy steel handcuffs echoed a profound shift in power. The man who played God in the shadows of Imperial Avenue was finally reduced to a captive. The mask of the polite, helpful neighbor was stripped away forever, leaving only the grim reality of his actions for the world to witness. The wheels of justice, once agonizingly slow, now moved with an unstoppable, crushing force. In 2011, Anthony Sowell faced a jury of his peers. Prosecutors meticulously laid out the forensic evidence, giving a powerful voice to the 11 women who had their futures stolen. The courtroom listened in stunned silence as the extent of his manipulation and cruelty was exposed. The jury returned a definitive verdict, securing multiple convictions and handing down a sentence of death. For the grieving families of Mount Pleasant, the verdict offered a vital measure of moral justice. They stood together on the courthouse steps, reclaiming the dignity of their loved ones and forcing a city to acknowledge its systemic blind spots. The tragedy sparked a sweeping reform within local law enforcement, mandating a rigorous, unified protocol for all missing persons cases, regardless of a victim's background or social status. Sowell never faced the executioner, passing away in a prison hospital in 2021. A forgotten man behind concrete walls. The monster of Imperial Avenue weaponized the indifference of his city, hiding his darkest acts behind the mundane facade of suburban life. But while Anthony Sowell exploited the neglected streets of Ohio, another trusted figure was using the very badge of authority to stalk the frozen roads of Siberia. Our journey into the darkest corners of human deception continues as we examine the chilling midnight patrols of Mikhail Popkov. The biting cold of a Siberian night in 1998 gnawed at the young woman shivering outside a local nightclub. A police cruiser pulled to the curb, its rotating lights casting a reassuring blue glow across the snow. The officer behind the wheel offered a warm smile and a safe ride home from a trusted servant of the state. She stepped into the back seat, the heavy metallic click of the door sealing her fate. It was the last time anyone would see her alive, but the beginning of a chilling mystery that would span decades. The city of Angarsk, tucked away in the vast Siberian expanse, was a community built on industry and close-knit bonds. Mothers finished their evening shifts at local factories, while young women laughed over shared dreams at neighborhood cafes. These were daughters and wives anticipating bright futures and cherishing quiet moments with their families. They took pride in their daily routines, walking familiar snow-lined streets, where everyone knew their neighbors. The freezing winter winds often drove them to seek warmth, and a familiar uniform offered the ultimate promise of security. At the center of this ordered society stood Mikhail Popkov, a man who projected an aura of unwavering authority and civic duty. To his community, he was a respected police officer tasked with maintaining peace in a harsh environment. He went home each night to a clean apartment, greeting his wife and daughter with the smile of a dedicated family man. His colleagues viewed him as a reliable partner, a man who understood the law and upheld the moral fabric of the city. No one suspected that, behind his crisp uniform and polite demeanor, lurked a predator observing his community with cold calculation. Beginning in 1992, a quiet terror began to seep into the foundations of Angarsk. Young women, many returning from evening gatherings or late shifts, vanished into the freezing nights without a trace. Families awoke to empty beds and unanswered phone calls, their initial worry morphing into suffocating dread. Search parties scoured the frozen woodlands surrounding the city, hoping for a miracle but bracing for the dark reality. Months turned into years, and the missing posters peeling on municipal bulletin boards became grim monuments to stolen futures. The woods eventually yielded their secrets, revealing that these women had met a brutal, permanent end. A chilling pattern emerged among the scattered clues, pointing toward an unthinkable betrayal of public trust. Survivors and witnesses whispered of a police vehicle patrolling the streets late at night, offering rides to stranded pedestrians. Tire tracks from a Lada Niva, the standard issue vehicle for local law enforcement, were documented near several restricted areas. Yet local authorities dismissed these whispers, unable to fathom that a monster wore their own badge. For nearly 2 decades, the shadows of the lost women haunted the Siberian landscape. While the investigation languished in dusty archives, in 2012, a specialized cold case task force arrived in Angarsk, determined to pierce the veil of institutional denial. These elite investigators recognized the localized nature of the disappearances, noting the geographical clustering around major transit routes. They began a painstaking reconstruction of the timeline, charting every known movement of the victims on massive corkboards. The investigators realized the perpetrator possessed an intimate knowledge of patrol schedules and forensic countermeasures. The key to unlocking this massive enigma lay in microscopic traces of biological evidence preserved against all odds in the freezing climate. Investigators cataloged organic material left at the crime scenes, treating every minuscule fiber as a sacred testament to the victims. They utilized advanced deoxyribonucleic acid profiling, a technology that did not exist when the terror first began. By isolating a specific genetic sequence, the forensic team created a biological fingerprint of the phantom stalking Angarsk. The challenge was immense, as they needed to compare this profile against a vast population of potential suspects. The task force made a bold and controversial decision, ordering genetic testing for thousands of current and former police officers in the region. This mandate sent ripples of indignation through the local precincts, but the investigators remained resolute in their pursuit of justice. They collected saliva samples, turning a massive gymnasium into a makeshift forensic laboratory. Officers lined up to provide their swabs, grumbling about the inconvenience, unaware that the net was closing. Day by day, the stack of cleared profiles grew, leaving a shrinking pool of men who held the power of the badge during the crucial years. The breakthrough arrived not from a direct match, but through the elegant science of familial genetic tracing. A sample provided by a relative of Mikhail Popkov flagged a compelling similarity in the centralized database. Analysts stared at their monitors in stunned silence, as the genetic markers aligned to point directly at the retired officer. Popkov had left the force in 1998, moving away from active duty but remaining in the region, living a quiet life funded by his police pension. The investigators now had a name, a face, and a direct biological link to the devastation inflicted on their city. Armed with undeniable scientific proof, detectives launched a covert surveillance operation tracking Popkov as he went about his mundane daily errands. They observed the man who had stolen so many futures, buying groceries and chatting with neighbors, his arrogance blinding him to his impending downfall. The task force secured travel records, discovering he was preparing to leave the region for a new job in another city. They knew they had to strike swiftly, ensuring this predator could never use his polite smile to lure another innocent soul. The tactical teams assembled in silence, reviewing the target profile one last time before moving to intercept. The trap snapped shut on a crisp morning in June of 2012. Mikhail Popkov sat in a train carriage headed for the eastern city of Vladivostok. Plainclothes officers flooded the compartment. There was nowhere to run, no badge to hide behind. The heavy metallic click of handcuffs echoed through the train car. The predator was finally a captive, his respectable facade shattered in an instant. The interrogation room was stark and unforgiving. Detectives laid the genetic evidence on the metal table. Popkov stared at the documents. His arrogant smirk faltered. The reality of his situation set in. He began to speak, his voice devoid of emotion. He recounted dates, locations, and names. The scope of his confession terrified even the hardened investigators. He did not stop at the known cases. He claimed responsibility for decades of terror. He admitted to using his police uniform to gain trust. He abused the authority of his badge to silence the vulnerable. He revealed hidden locations in the Siberian forests. The true scale of his deception emerged. The respected officer was one of the most prolific monsters in modern history. The community reeled from the unimaginable betrayal. The wheels of justice turned with deliberate precision, ensuring every victim received their day in court. In the year 2015, Mikhail Popkov faced his first trial, standing behind the reinforced glass of the defendant's cage. The prosecution presented an overwhelming mountain of forensic evidence, stripping away his arrogant defenses. The court found him guilty of 22 counts, sentencing him to spend the remainder of his natural life behind bars. However, the true depths of his crimes were still being uncovered. A second trial convened in the year 2018, confronting Popkov with an additional 59 confirmed cases. The meticulous detective work had linked him to a total of over 80 victims, bringing a profound sense of closure to dozens of grieving families. The judge handed down a second life sentence, guaranteeing the former officer would never again breathe the air of a free man. The state stripped him of his pension, his rank, and his false legacy. The community of Angarsk began to heal, finding solace in the fact that their relentless pursuit of truth had triumphed over institutional deception. It was a stark reminder that even those sworn to protect can harbor a dark and hidden malice. Yet this betrayal of public trust is not confined to the frozen streets of Siberia. Across the globe, another monster hid behind a mask of civic leadership, leaving a floppy disk that would ultimately seal his doom. Our descent continues in Wichita, Kansas, with the chilling arrogance of Dennis Rader. In the early weeks of 2005, an unassuming purple floppy disk arrived at a local television station in Wichita, Kansas. The sender believed themselves to be a phantom, a cunning shadow who had outsmarted law enforcement for over 30 years. But digital forensics experts placed the disk into a secure drive and unearthed a hidden layer of deleted metadata. The digital breadcrumbs did not lead to a dark criminal underworld. They pointed straight to the welcoming doors of a prominent local church. Park City, Kansas in the 1970s and 80s epitomized the quiet tranquility of the American Midwest. Manicured lawns stretched alongside wide, peaceful avenues, and neighbors exchanged warm greetings across low white picket fences. Families attended Sunday services. Children rode their bicycles until the streetlights flickered on, and a profound sense of safety blanketed the community. The residents believed true evil existed only on television screens, far removed from their wholesome suburban reality. They locked their doors at night out of mere habit, unaware that a predator possessed the keys to their trust. At the center of this idyllic civic life stood Dennis Rader. He was a man who commanded respect, serving as the president of his church council and a devoted Cub Scout leader. Parents trusted him to guide their young boys on weekend camping trips into the woods. As the local compliance officer for Park City, he roamed the neighborhoods in a uniform, measuring grass heights and citing residents for unleashed dogs. He enforced the rules with a rigid, arrogant enthusiasm, projecting the image of a meticulous guardian of community standards. He wore his authority like a shield, blinding his neighbors to the darkness lurking beneath his polite smile, behind closed doors. The reality of Dennis Rader offered a chilling contrast. While he sat in pews and distributed communion wafers, he planned the demise of innocent families. The victims were vibrant, loving individuals with bright futures. Josephine and Joseph Otero went about their morning routines, preparing their children for school, oblivious to the man watching from the shadows. Nancy Fox returned to her quiet apartment after a long day at the jewelry store, seeking only the comforting embrace of her home. Rader stole their futures, engaging in a sick psychological warfare that shattered the illusion of suburban safety for generations. He weaponized the trust of a small town, turning the sanctuary of the family home into a trap. For over a decade, a suffocating silence had fallen over the cold cases. Law enforcement agencies feared the phantom had perished or relocated far beyond the state borders. But the arrogant need for recognition burns white-hot within the minds of narcissists. In March of 2004, a local newspaper published a retrospective article marking the 30th anniversary of the first tragic events. The article suggested the elusive phantom had faded into irrelevance, forgotten by a world moving forward. This perceived slight struck a nerve, awakening a dormant monster who demanded center stage. Days later, the silence broke with a heavy metallic thud. A letter arrived at the offices of the Wichita Eagle, bearing a chilling return address. Inside the envelope, investigators found precise photographs and a copy of a victim's missing driver's license. The items belonged to Vicki Widerl, a vibrant young mother who met a tragic end in 1986. Her case had long stumped detectives as the perpetrator left minimal physical evidence behind. The return of her license, pristine and carefully preserved, sent a shockwave through the police department. The phantom had returned to claim his grim handiwork. He was unable to let another man take credit or let the public forget his reign of terror. He believed he held the ultimate power, dictating the terms of engagement from behind an impenetrable mask. He initiated a dangerous game of cat and mouse, convinced the local police lacked the intellect to catch him. His ego demanded an audience, and he was eager to prove his superiority over the detectives who had chased his shadow for decades. The Wichita Police Department formed a specialized task force, bringing together elite minds from the Federal Bureau of Investigation and seasoned local detectives. They set up a secure command center lining the walls with decades of timelines, geographical maps, and psychological profiles. Forensic profilers from Quantico studied the new letter, noting the rigid sentence structure and peculiar misspellings. They concluded the sender was a white male in his late 50s, obsessed with order, and possessing a desperate craving for control. He viewed himself as a master chess player, but the detectives knew that arrogance breeds carelessness. Throughout the summer and fall of 2004, the task force engaged in a high-stakes psychological dance. Rader deposited cryptic packages across the city, leaving serial boxes modified into intricate drop sites He sent word puzzles, dolls bound in disturbing knots, and rambling manifestos to local television stations. Detectives utilized specialized forensic linguists to dissect every single phrase. They analyzed his punctuation choices, identifying a distinct dialect and a bizarre tendency to blend poetic grandiosity with bureaucratic jargon. The linguist realized they were reading the words of a man accustomed to writing sterile official reports. Detectives cataloged the geographical locations of the drop sites, employing advanced spatial mapping techniques. The data points clustered around specific intersections in Park City, hinting at the perpetrator's daily commuting routes. Surveillance teams blanketed these zones, logging license plate numbers and cross-referencing thousands of vehicles. The operation demanded grueling hours, with officers drinking stale coffee in unmarked vans, waiting for a phantom to materialize. Yet Ratter remained a ghost, utilizing the vast suburban landscape to cloak his movements. He used his knowledge as a compliance officer to avoid suspicion, moving through alleys and side streets with unquestioned authority. The turning point emerged from an astonishing display of technological ignorance. Ratter desired a more efficient method to communicate his twisted demands, growing tired of manual typewriters and photocopiers. In a message delivered in early 2005, he asked the police a direct question. He wanted to know if a floppy disk could be traced back to a specific computer, demanding an honest answer via coded newspaper advertisement. Detectives recognized the golden opportunity. They placed a classified ad in the local paper reading, "Rex, it will be fine." It was a calculated deception, a brilliant trap set for an egomaniac who believed he was the smartest man in the room. A few weeks later, a padded envelope arrived at a local television affiliate. Inside rested a standard 1.44 megabyte purple floppy disk. Computer forensic specialists at the Federal Bureau of Investigation took possession of the evidence. They bypassed the visible files, diving straight into the disk's foundational code, using specialized data recovery software. They unearthed a deleted Microsoft Word document. The hidden metadata contained a digital footprint that could never be erased. It showed the document was last modified by a user named Dennis on a computer registered to Christ Lutheran Church. Detectives drove to the church, their pulses pounding with anticipation. They spoke to the pastor, asking who had access to the office computer. The pastor offered a single name, Dennis Ratter, the president of the church council, the strict compliance officer of Park City. The mask of suburban perfection shattered in an instant. Investigators pulled his motor vehicle records, discovering he drove a black Jeep Cherokee. It was the exact model spotted on surveillance footage near a recent drop site. The meticulous detective work had cornered the beast. The task force needed irrefutable biological proof. They could not risk alerting him before the trap snapped shut. Investigators secured a clandestine warrant for his daughter's medical records at a university clinic. They attained a crucial DNA sample from a routine medical exam, placing it in a secure cooler and driving it straight to the state laboratory. The tension in the command center reached a breaking point. The clock ticked down. Detectives knew Rader was plotting his next strike. Having teased the existence of a new target he called Project Anna, they had to move. The laboratory technicians worked through the night. The results flashed onto the screen. It was a flawless familial match. The DNA confirmed Dennis Ratter was the Phantom. Elite tactical units surrounded his modest suburban home. They blocked off the manicured street. They waited in the bitter cold. They watched the heavy wooden door, their weapons drawn and their breathing steady. On a crisp Friday morning, the door swung open. Ratter stepped out into the daylight. He walked toward his city-issued vehicle. He looked like a harmless neighborhood grandfather heading off to work. Tactical officers swarmed the driveway. Sirens pierced the quiet morning air. They pushed him against the cold metal of the vehicle. Heavy steel handcuffs locked around his wrists. The tyrant of Park City looked bewildered. His era of arrogant deception met a sudden permanent end. Inside the sterile confines of the interrogation room, the facade of the strict compliance officer crumbled. Confronted with the overwhelming digital and biological evidence, Ratter waived his rights. He confessed to his decades of terror. In June of 2005, he stood before a packed courtroom. He pleaded guilty to 10 counts of first-degree taking of a human life. He spoke with a chilling bureaucratic detachment, recounting his horrific actions as if reading a municipal code violation. The families of the victims sat in the gallery, holding on to one another, projecting immense strength and unbreakable dignity. The judge delivered a righteous blow to the narcissist. Dennis Ratter received 10 consecutive life sentences, ensuring he would never draw another breath of free air. He was banished to a solitary concrete cell, stripped of his power, his uniform, and his arrogant pride. The families of Vicky Witterell, the Oteros, and the other beautiful souls he targeted watched the scales of justice balance. They reclaimed their narratives, refusing to let his dark legacy overshadow the vibrant memories of their loved ones. Law enforcement proved that no matter how deep the secret, meticulous science and unwavering dedication will always drag the truth into the light. Yet, the unsettling reality of predators hiding behind masks of respectability extends far beyond the borders of Kansas. We must turn our attention to the historic streets of Alexandria, Virginia, where a prominent local figure named Charles Severance waged his own hidden war against the elite. In the Grand Courthouse of Alexandria, Virginia, a judge unsealed an indictment that sent a shiver through the elite political establishment. For 11 long years, the community harbored a dark shadow, believing a random tragedy had visited the sheriff's family. But the fresh ink on the legal documents revealed a targeted, terrifying vendetta. A ghost had walked their manicured streets, hiding behind the guise of a familiar face. Alexandria, Virginia, in the dawn of the 2000s, stood as a bastion of genteel Southern politics and historical charm. Brick-paved sidewalks wound past immaculate colonial homes, where crystal glasses clinked on expansive verandas during evening fundraisers. This affluent enclave operated like a tight-knit family, insulated by wealth and guarded by an unspoken code of mutual protection. Power brokers and political elites moved through these neighborhoods with a sense of invincibility, trusting the heavy oak doors and intricate brass locks of their heritage estates. It was a place where everyone knew their neighbors and strangers always drew immediate attention. Nancy Dunning thrived as the shining star of this exclusive community, as a prominent real estate agent and the wife of the local sheriff. Her bright smile and generous spirit commanded respect across town. She spent her mornings reviewing property listings over black coffee, ensuring her clients found the perfect sanctuary for their own families. Her life revolved around local charity boards, community events, and the quiet comfort of her long-term marriage. Friends admired her unwavering dedication to the city, viewing her as a pillar of grace in an often cutthroat political arena. A few blocks away, transportation planner Ronald Kirby and beloved music teacher Ruthann Lodeto lived respectable, purpose-driven lives. Ronald spent decades shaping the infrastructure of the region, carrying an air of quiet intellect and dignified public service. Ruthann filled her home with the sound of classical piano, guiding generations of children through the delicate notes of Mozart and Bach. These individuals formed the very backbone of the local establishment, embodying the quiet stability of a prosperous city. They had no way of knowing a silent threat, harbored a profound grudge against their way of life. The illusion of safety shattered on the cold morning of December 5, 2003. Nancy Dunning skipped a scheduled lunch date with her husband and son, an uncharacteristic break in her meticulous routine. When her family returned to their sprawling Mount Vernon home that afternoon, the quiet stillness of the house felt wrong. The front door stood unlocked, and a quick search yielded a grim discovery in the hallway. Nancy had met a sudden permanent end, leaving the sheriff's family thrust into a waking nightmare. Investigators descended upon the property, treating the scene with the utmost delicacy given the victim's prominent status. First responders secured the perimeter, while forensic technicians combed the manicured lawn for footprints. They found no signs of forced entry, no stolen jewelry, and no ransacked drawers. The intruder had bypassed valuable silver and expensive electronics, leaving the pristine home untouched save for the horrifying reality in the hall. Detectives noted the precise, cold efficiency of the act, suggesting a deliberate and calculated strike rather than a frantic robbery gone wrong. The local police department worked without rest, fielding thousands of tips and interviewing hundreds of potential suspects. Suspicion fell close to home, casting a long, painful shadow over the grieving sheriff for years. The absence of a clear motive paralyzed the investigation, turning the tragedy into Alexandria's most guarded mystery. As the seasons changed, the case grew cold, and the elite community convinced themselves this was an isolated tragedy. They locked their doors a little tighter, but the false comfort of time allowed them to drop their guard. For 10 years, the secret held. Then, on a crisp November morning in 2013, the terror returned. Ronald Kirby opened his front door to an unknown visitor, and within moments, his life was stolen away in broad daylight. The crime scene mirrored the eerie, pristine nature of the Dunning house. No theft, no struggle, just a rapid, calculated encounter. The phantom had resurfaced, confirming the worst fears of the local law enforcement agencies. 6 months later, in February 2014, the predator struck again. An assailant knocked on the door of Ruthann Lodito, initiating another tragic sequence of events. She met the same devastating fate as the others. But this time, the perpetrator made a crucial mistake. An observant caregiver inside the home survived the encounter, catching a fleeting glimpse of an older bearded man fleeing the scene. This single witness description provided the first crack in the phantom's armor, giving detectives a face to hunt. Alexandria authorities formed a specialized task force, realizing a serial predator was actively hunting their most prominent citizens. Forensic technicians secured ballistics from all 3 scenes, sending the specialized brass casings to the State Crime Laboratory for advanced metrological analysis. Under high-powered comparison microscopes, technicians isolated distinct striations on the spent ammunition. The groove patterns aligned with flawless precision. The laboratory confirmed all 3 prominent figures fell victim to the exact same .22 caliber subsonic ammunition fired from a specific vintage revolver. Detectives pivoted their strategy, looking not for a standard criminal, but for someone harboring a profound hatred for the Alexandria establishment. Analysts fed decades of local political records, erratic public complaints, and court filings into their database. A name surfaced from the archives, bringing a dark past into the light: Charles Severance, a former fringe mayoral candidate from the 1990s. Severance had a history of bizarre public outbursts and a documented hatred for local elites. As the task force dug deeper into his background, they uncovered a massive trail of digital breadcrumbs. Cyber investigators obtained search warrants for his electronic devices and historical internet activity. They found thousands of pages of encrypted journals, detailing his obsessive fury over losing a custody battle in the local family court years prior. In these paranoid writings, he advocated for striking back at the civic leaders he blamed for his failures. The detectives mapped his known whereabouts, matching his sporadic visits to Alexandria with the precise timestamps of the 3 tragedies. The net began to tighten, but the arrogant suspect sensed the shifting tide. In March 2014, Charles Severance packed his bags and fled across state lines, seeking refuge in the dense Appalachian foothills of West Virginia. The Federal Bureau of Investigation joined the hunt, deploying fugitive tracking teams and utilizing advanced cellular tower triangulation. Analysts monitored a faint electronic signal bouncing off a rural transmitter, pinpointing his location to a dusty local library. Law enforcement officers orchestrated a quiet apprehension, securing the perimeter and taking him into custody. A subsequent search of his makeshift camp yielded the definitive smoking gun. Detectives recovered a cache of the exact rare .22 caliber subsonic ammunition used in all 3 Alexandria crimes. The courtroom prepared for a battle of wits. The prosecution laid out an ironclad timeline. The defense tried to deflect. They pointed to the lack of a primary weapon. But the forensic evidence spoke louder. Experts took the stand. They presented the microscopic groove patterns. They displayed the rare ammunition found in his possession. The jury stared at the undeniable physical link. The arrogance of the accused began to fracture under the weight of the facts. Prosecutors introduced his own written words. Page after page of his manifesto illuminated the courtroom. The jury read his explicit instructions to strike at the elites. They saw his blueprint for revenge. The man who cast himself as a misunderstood genius was exposed as a petty coward. He had targeted innocent people to soothe his own fragile ego. The mask of a political crusader slipped. A cold, predatory reality remained. The final day of the trial brought a heavy silence. The grieving families sat in the front rows. They watched the man who broke their lives. He refused to look at them. The clock ticked toward a verdict. The suspense hung in the sterile air of the courthouse. The jury returned with striking speed. In the fall of 2015, the hammer of justice arrived. The jury convicted Charles Severance on all charges, securing his fate behind concrete and steel. The judge handed down 3 consecutive life sentences, ensuring he would never again walk the cobblestone streets he so despised. For the city of Alexandria, the verdict brought a profound sense of closure. The long shadow cast over the Dunning, Kirby, and Lodato families began to lift, replaced by the enduring memory of their immense contributions to the community. Severance spent his remaining years locked away from the society he tried to destroy. His grand delusions of historical significance faded into the mundane reality of maximum security confinement. In the spring of 2024, he passed away behind bars, unmourned and forgotten by the outside world. The brilliant forensic work of the Alexandria Task Force proved its worth. It demonstrated that no amount of twisted intellect can outrun the persistent march of diligent law enforcement. The pristine facades of affluent communities often conceal the darkest intentions. But what happens when the very people sworn to protect those neighborhoods become the architects of their terror? Our journey into the abyss continues as we examine a chilling discovery inside a dry bathtub where a disgraced police sergeant tried to wash away his ultimate sin. An oval bathtub, pristine and bone-dry inside, lies a woman, positioned in a manner that defies basic physics. Yet the men sworn to seek the truth take one glance at the scene and declare it a tragic, ordinary accident. The official file slams shut, burying a sinister truth beneath a shining silver badge. The suburban streets of Bolingbrook, Illinois, projected a serene illusion during the early years of the new millennium. Manicured lawns stretched out in uniform squares. Children rode bicycles down quiet cul-de-sacs, and neighbors exchanged polite waves from their driveways. It was the kind of affluent enclave where families moved to escape the chaos of the city. Walking these streets with an arrogant, untouchable swagger was veteran police Sergeant Drew Peterson. He wielded his local authority like a heavy iron shield, commanding a fearful respect from the very community he was sworn to protect. Behind the polished front door of his pristine suburban home, the picturesque illusion shattered into pieces. Kathleen Savio, Peterson's third wife, lived in a constant, suffocating state of dread. She was a dedicated mother known for her warm smile, her meticulous housekeeping, and her quiet determination to build a better life. Kathleen spent her evenings studying late into the night, working tirelessly to earn her nursing degree. She dreamed of financial independence and a peaceful home for her 2 young boys, but a cold, relentless shadow trailed her every step. Kathleen and the veteran sergeant were locked in a bitter, contentious divorce. As the final financial settlement loomed, the psychological warfare intensified. Peterson used his position and his patrol car to stalk her movements. He parked outside her house in the dead of night, sending a silent message that she could never truly escape his grip. Kathleen confided her terror to anyone who would listen. She told her sisters, she warned her friends, and she wrote desperate letters outlining a creeping, inescapable dread. She spoke a chilling prophecy stating that if she met a sudden end, her husband was the architect. Her voice went unheard, swallowed by the deafening roar of institutional protection. March 1, 2004. A lingering, unsettling silence falls over Kathleen's home. She fails to return phone calls, and she misses a scheduled weekend exchange of her children. Alarmed by the sudden break in her strict daily routine, concerned neighbors arrive at her front doorstep. A licksmus is called to the scene. The heavy metallic click of the front door unlocking echoes through the quiet, empty hallway. First responders step over the threshold, navigating the silent house until they reach the master bathroom there. They make a grim, heart-stopping discovery. Kathleen Savio has met a brutal, permanent end. The immediate environment screams of foul play. Kathleen rests inside the master bathtub, but the porcelain basin holds no water, and the drain sits wide open. A jagged wound marks the back of her head, and dark, unexplained bruises map a desperate struggle across her skin. Her hair is matted, bearing the evidence of a severe impact. Yet the lead investigator's men, who share a precinct and a uniform with Drew Peterson, refuse to look past the badge. They wave off the obvious signs of a physical confrontation. They label the tragedy a simple slip and fall, categorizing the loss as an accidental drowning. They sign the official paperwork, pack up their forensic kits, and walk away. Kathleen's grieving family watches in horror as the local justice system turns a blind eye. The arrogant sergeant collects a substantial life insurance payout, keeps his pension, and parades his freedom without a second thought. 3 years drift by, buried under the deceptive quiet of suburban routine. Peterson takes a 4th wife, a vibrant, compassionate young woman named Stacy. She brings warmth into a dark, rigid household, raising Kathleen's young boys as her own. She attends local college classes, tends to the sprawling garden, and tries to maintain the perfect facade. But behind closed doors, the suffocating cycle of psychological abuse repeats. Stacy discovers the terrifying reality of the man she married. She begins documenting her fears, quietly confiding in her pastor and making secret recordings then. On October 28, 2007, the facade shatters for good. Stacy vanishes. She leaves behind no packed bags, no final goodbyes, and no arrangements for the children she cherishes. Peterson steps in front of the local news cameras, flashing a familiar, arrogant smirk. He casually claims his young wife ran off with another man, seeking a vacation in a warm climate. This time, the community refuses to swallow the lies. The sudden, chilling absence of a second wife shatters the precinct's protective wall. Public outrage reaches a boiling point, forcing state officials to step in. The Illinois State Police take command of the investigation, stripping the local Bolingbrook Department of their jurisdiction and ending the era of suburban protection. Detectives launch a relentless, microscopic review of Drew Peterson's entire past. Investigators march down into the precinct archives and pull the dusty, neglected case file on Kathleen Savio. The crime scene photographs from 2004 tell a glaring story that the original local detectives intentionally ignored. State forensic pathologists examine the distinct bruising patterns documented on Kathleen's body. They note the unnatural position of her remains the pristine condition of the dry porcelain basin, and the defensive wounds that were dismissed as common scrapes. The physical evidence demands immediate, aggressive action. The state authorities take a drastic, sobering step to secure justice. They order the exhumation of Kathleen's remains. A solemn procession carries the casket from the earth, transporting it to an independent medical facility. A premier, nationally recognized forensic pathologist conducts a second exhaustive examination of the remains. The new findings obliterate the accidental drowning theory. The forensic expert identifies anterior and posterior bruising, proving that Kathleen suffered multiple impacts from a forceful confrontation. The injuries point directly to a deliberate act that stole her future. An official coroner's inquest convenes, reviewing the irrefutable forensic science. The legal verdict changes, officially reclassifying Kathleen's tragic end from an accident to a criminal act of foul play. The net around the arrogant sergeant begins to tighten. But state detectives face a colossal barrier. Their best witnesses are gone. The American justice system demands living testimony, yet Peterson has ensured his victims cannot take the stand. To conquer this hurdle, investigators pivot to a brilliant, unprecedented legal strategy. They scour through old letters, forgotten diaries, and frantic voicemails left by both Kathleen and Stacy. They conduct marathon interview sessions with every friend, relative, and neighbor who heard the women whisper their darkest fears. Prosecutors push for a groundbreaking legislative maneuver in the state of Illinois, a statute later known as Drew's Law. This legal shift allows hearsay statements to enter the courtroom under specific stringent conditions, giving voices back to the silenced victims. The detectives build a massive chronological timeline, mapping out an undeniable pattern of coercion, intimidation, and raw psychological warfare. They prove that Peterson used his law enforcement badge to terrorize his wives, threatening them with a system he controlled. Piece by agonizing piece, investigators construct an ironclad cage of circumstantial evidence, preparing to face down a predator who believed he was above the law. July 2012, the heavy wooden doors of the county courthouse swing open. Drew Peterson sits at the defense table, bathed in the harsh fluorescent light of the courtroom. His trademark arrogance remains intact. He smiles at the gallery. He jokes with his legal team. And he projects the confidence of a man who believes the badge still protects him. But the state prosecution launches a relentless, methodical assault. They call witness after witness to the stand. The jury hears Kathleen's own desperate words echoing from beyond the grave. The crushing tension grips the room, suffocating the arrogant smirk right off the defendant's face. Defense attorneys fight back with frantic energy. They attack the new hearsay law, demanding a mistrial at every turn. The presiding judge holds firm, denying the objections. The ticking clock of justice counts down, escalating the suspense with each passing hour. Prosecutors project the haunting photographs of the dry bathtub onto a massive screen. They highlight the defensive bruising. They dismantle the facade of the untouchable cop, and they expose the cold reality of a predator hiding in plain sight. The courtroom holds its collective breath as the state rests its case. The jury withdraws to deliberate, leaving the community in a state of agonizing silence. 14 hours stretch into days then. On September 6, 2012, the four-person stands, the tense silence shatters guilty. The color drains from Peterson's face, his shoulders slump, and the reality of a cold steel cell finally sets in. The predator who wore a badge faces the ultimate reckoning. The judge hands down a definitive sentence of 38 years behind bars. The ruling ensures the disgraced former sergeant will spend the rest of his natural life trapped in a concrete cage, stripped of his authority and his freedom. Kathleen's family weeps openly in the gallery, finding a profound measure of solace after a grueling 8-year battle for moral justice. The ultimate triumph of truth over elite privilege resonates through the halls of the courthouse. Yet, a haunting shadow remains suspended over the town of Bolingbrook. Stacy Peterson is still missing. Her vibrant life remains reduced to a cold case file, her final whereabouts a secret held by a man who refuses to speak. The state police keep the investigation open, holding on to the steadfast hope that the earth will one day reveal her final resting place. The community remembers her smile, waiting for a closure that has not yet arrived. The betrayal of public trust leaves a permanent scar. But Peterson is not the only man to hide a sinister compulsion behind a badge of authority. Across the country, another trusted official walks through the ashes of his own dark creation. Our descent continues with California arson investigator John Leonard Orr. Beneath the charred smoking rubble of a retail store, a solitary clue survived the inferno. A single fingerprint pressed onto a fragile piece of yellow legal paper used as a time delay fuse. The seasoned investigator assigned to track this elusive phantom was the very man who left the print. In the 1980s, Captain John Leonard Orr stood as a pillar of unwavering authority within the Glendale Fire Department in Southern California. He wore his crisp navy blue uniform with an air of unquestionable command. As a lead arson investigator, he held the sacred trust of a sprawling community, a public terrified by the unpredictable and devastating nature of fire. Colleagues across the state looked up to him. He led specialized training seminars, lecturing other officers on the fractured psychology of serial arsonists. He understood the minds of these criminals, speaking with an unsettling fluency about their motives, their patterns, and their methods. To the outside world, John appeared as the ultimate guardian against the flames. He walked through smoldering ruins with practiced confidence, pointing out obscure burn patterns and hidden chemical traces that ordinary officers missed. Citizens felt secure, knowing a mind so sharp protected their local businesses and family homes. He earned prestigious accolades and helped form elite task forces designed to hunt down the state's most dangerous fire setters. His presence at a crime scene brought a sense of order to the chaos behind closed doors. A darker reality festered. The respected captain harbored a grim obsession, a destructive compulsion masked by his shiny badge and shielded by his vast expertise. While he shook hands with local politicians and comforted grieving business owners, he viewed his peers with quiet, suffocating arrogance. He believed he was the smartest man in any room, capable of outwitting the very justice system he swore to uphold. This delusion of supreme superiority paved the way for a betrayal of public trust that shattered the illusion of safety across the Golden Coast of California. The turning point arrived on an ordinary afternoon in October 1984. Families browsed the aisles of Oli's Home Center, a bustling hardware store in the peaceful suburb of South Pasadena. Customers pushed metal carts through roads of paint, heavy tools, and lumber. Among them was 50-year-old Ida Deal, picking out hardware supplies alongside her 2-year-old grandson, Matthew. In another aisle, a young mother named Carolyn Cross shopped for her home, while an 18-year-old employee, Jimmy Satina, diligently restocked the inventory shelves. They shared a quiet, unassuming Wednesday, oblivious to the impending doom resting quietly in the center of the store. At 4:10 in the afternoon, a small, subtle wisp of smoke curled from the volatile huolyrafane foam displays. Within moments, the synthetic materials ignited, transforming the busy store into an inescapable labyrinth of thick, blinding smoke and searing heat. The metal roof structural supports failed, crashing down onto the aisles below and trapping the shoppers. Despite the frantic, heroic efforts of first responders, the blaze moved with unnatural speed. Ada, little Matthew, Carolyn, and Jimmy perished in the suffocating darkness, their bright futures stolen by a sudden, inexplicable disaster. Local investigators initially ruled the tragic event a catastrophic electrical accident, but silent anomalies lurked within the cooling ashes. A specialized arson investigator from a neighboring district pushed for a closer look, noting the specific rapid acceleration of the flames that defied standard accidental fires. It took time, but meticulous forensic analysis eventually revealed the grim truth. This was no accident. A deliberate incendiary device carefully constructed to ignite the combustible foam triggered the catastrophe. Someone intentionally set the spark, transforming a community hardware store into a fatal trap. A terrifying pattern began to emerge across the sprawling retail landscape of Southern California. Throughout the mid-1980s, a string of unexplained fires targeted craft stores, fabric shops, and home improvement centers. The perpetrator operated during broad daylight, striking normal business hours when the aisles were full of unsuspecting shoppers. The mechanism remained consistent, a simple but devastating time delay fuse. The arsonist wrapped a lit cigarette in 3 matches, bound them with a common rubber band, and nestled the device inside flammable merchandise. Local task forces mobilized, poring over physical evidence and interviewing terrified witness after witness. Captain John Leonard Orr frequently arrived at these very scenes, taking immediate charge of the forensic analysis. He eagerly pointed out the intricate details of the incendiary devices to his junior colleagues, holding the charred remnants in his gloved hands. He guided the official narrative, steering the investigation with his vast, assumed knowledge of the suspect. Detectives felt grateful for his sharp eye, failing to realize the predator stood beside them, orchestrating the massive hunt from within the very ranks designed to stop him. The crucial breakthrough materialized in 1987, during a statewide convention for arson investigators in the Central California city of Fresno. While hundreds of elite fire officials gathered in hotel conference rooms, a sudden rash of small fires broke out at local retail stores down the street. Local authorities recovered a partially unburned time delay device from a craft store. The arsonist used a piece of yellow-lined notebook paper to conceal the matches. On that fragile singed scrap of paper, laboratory technicians lifted a single pristine fingerprint. Years passed as the mysterious fingerprint sat in state databases, waiting for technological advancements to catch up with the evidence. In 1991, a dedicated task force spearheaded by federal agents ran the print through a newly developed automated database system. The computer churned through thousands of records, searching for a definitive match. When the result flashed on the glowing screen, the federal investigators stared in stunned silence. The fingerprint belonged to Captain John Leonard Orr. The task force commander demanded a manual verification, refusing to believe a decorated colleague orchestrated the devastation. With the suspect positively identified, a tense, covert surveillance operation began. Federal agents placed a hidden tracking beacon on the undercarriage of John S. unmarked city vehicle. They watched from a safe distance in unmarked vans as he attended another arson investigators convention, this time in the coastal city of San Luis Obispo. As his vehicle moved down the highway, agents noted dark smoke billowing from fresh brush fires along his exact driving route. They documented his stops, cross-referencing his physical location with new emergency dispatch calls. The arrogant fire captain, unaware of the invisible net closing around him, continued his destructive ritual. During this intense week of surveillance, agents uncovered the most chilling piece of evidence of all. John submitted a fictional manuscript to various publishing houses in New York, titled Points of Origin. The typed book detailed the terrifying exploits of a serial arsonist named Aaron, a fireman who set devastating blazes and then basked in the glory of investigating them. The manuscript contained specific non-public details about the 1984 South Pasadena hardware store fire. He described the exact placement of the incendiary device and the agonizing final moments of the victims, framing his horrific actions as a grand, misunderstood masterpiece. The net finally snapped shut in December 1991. Federal agents descended on the suspect's suburban home, moving with swift, decisive precision. They breached the front door, stripping the disgraced captain of his badge and his grand illusion of control. Inside his residence, investigators discovered a terrifying cache of physical evidence. They found bags of rubber bands, specific brands of matches, and the distinct yellow legal paper used in the incendiary devices. The physical tools of his massive deception laid bare across his kitchen table. The subsequent trial became a gripping spectacle of shattered trust. Prosecutors stood before a captivated jury, meticulously dismantling the disgraced captain's carefully crafted facade of heroism. They placed the unburned fingerprint, the surveillance logs, and the undeniable tracking data into evidence. The bustling courtroom fell into a stunned, breathless silence when the lead prosecutor held up the typed manuscript. He read the arrogant, boastful words aloud to the jury, turning the fictional narrative into a chilling, factual confession. The predator sat at the defense table, his confident smirk slowly dissolving into a mask of cold, terrified realization. The ticking clock of his freedom expired as the jury connected the overwhelming forensic dots. He believed his respected position shielded him from consequence, assuming the very badge he wore made him untouchable. But the meticulous, unyielding efforts of the federal task force proved that no title could outrun the truth. The sinister architect of the flames finally faced the cold ashes of his own ruined life in a resounding victory for moral justice. The court delivered a crushing definitive verdict. A jury found John Leonard Orr guilty of multiple counts of serial arson and 4 counts of fatal arson for the innocent lives lost in the South Pasadena hardware store. The presiding judge sentenced him to multiple consecutive life terms in federal prison without the possibility of parole. He exchanged his crisp, decorated uniform for a drab prison jumpsuit, confined to a barren concrete cell for the rest of his natural life. The meticulous detective work brought a necessary measure of peace to the grieving families of Ada, Matthew, Carolyn, and Jimmy. The horrific tragedy reshaped modern investigative protocols, forcing departments nationwide to fiercely scrutinize their own ranks. As the heavy steel doors slammed shut on the disgraced fire captain, a lingering shadow falls over the concept of public trust, leading us to our final chilling mystery. From small-town mayors to decorated investigators, these cases reveal a terrifying truth: the most dangerous predators often hide behind a trusted badge of authority or a warm smile of civic duty. We must ask ourselves, how many more remain undetected in our own quiet neighborhoods? Thank you for watching, and click the video on your screen to uncover more gripping mysteries. We look for monsters in the shadows, yet they wear the tailored suits of mayors, neighbors, and pillars of our communities. How many of these immaculate masks are still walking among us, waiting for the moment to slip? Thank you for watching to explore another chilling descent. Select the video on your screen now.